Let me tell you something most people will never admit out loud. You don't need to be brilliant to become a millionaire. You just need to stop being stupid. And the truth is, that's a much harder job. I've watched people turn $10,000 into $1 million. Not by chasing hot stocks, not by pulling off some genius move, but by simply avoiding the common disasters everyone else walks into with their eyes wide open. No secret formulas, no hedge fund tactics, just consistency, patience, and the guts to not screw it up. Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they refuse to stay boring long enough for compounding to do its work. Let me be blunt. $10,000 done right will beat $1 million done wrong every time, especially if you're over 50, because you don't get a second chance to learn this lesson. So if you've ever looked at your modest savings and thought, what's the point? If you felt like it's too late to build real wealth, this isn't just a wake-up call, it's a rescue mission. But only if you stop doing the things that quietly kill your money. We're going to walk through exactly what those are and how to protect your future from yourself. Let's start with the reality nobody wants to face. If you're over 50, here's the cold truth. You are not in the same game as a 25-year-old. And pretending you are is one of the fastest ways to go broke. You don't have time for major comebacks. You don't have the same energy, risk tolerance, or decades to fix dumb mistakes. And your brain, no matter how sharp, is not built for speed, hype, or high-frequency decisions anymore. But here's the good news. You also don't need to play that game to win. You're not trying to get rich overnight. You're trying to stay rich for the rest of your life. That requires a different kind of strategy, one that favors patience over prediction, survival over speed, and simplicity over sophistication. And that strategy works extremely well when you stop doing just a few dangerous things that most investors fall for. Yes, $10,000 might not sound like much, but if you treat it like nothing, you'll never respect the kind of behavior that turns it into something. The truth is, small money compounds into large money, not through brilliance, but through refusal to sabotage it. If you're over 50, your biggest asset isn't your income. It's your ability to stop bleeding money through bad decisions. And if you do that, you give your capital one last chance to grow. This is the difference between someone retiring with quiet confidence and someone working into their 70s because they chased the wrong dream too late. Let me show you how I learned that lesson the hard way, through the stories that shaped everything I believe about investing. I remember a man named Russell, early 60s, divorced, no pension, just over $120,000 in retirement savings and a small condo he managed to keep in the divorce. He was desperate to catch up, felt embarrassed like he'd wasted decades, so he started watching YouTube gurus, followed Reddit threads, dabbled in crypto, options, penny stocks, always looking for that one big win to make up for lost time. He turned his $120,000 into $260,000 in under a year. It looked like magic. And then came the crash overnight. It dropped to $90,000, then $70,000. He panicked, sold at the worst moment, and walked away with barely $60,000, half of what he started with. By the time we sat down to talk, he wasn't looking for investments anymore. He was looking for part-time work. I didn't have the heart to tell him. The real mistake wasn't the crash. It was thinking he had no time, and then using that fear to justify gambling, because fear always whispers, "You're behind, do something big," but that voice is a liar. Russell didn't need brilliance. He just needed restraint. Now let me tell you about Jean, retired teacher. Started investing in her late 40s. Nothing flashy, just an index fund and a Roth IRA. She never earned more than $60,000 a year, but she contributed $400 a month. No drama, no market timing, just steady, boring deposits. She never once chased a trend. Didn't even flinch in 2008. When she retired at 65, she had over $780,000. Plus a paid-off house. That money didn't come from some lucky bet. It came from never making a stupid one. Jean told me once, "I never felt like I was doing anything impressive. I just didn't stop." That's it. That's the whole secret. Nobody talks about people like Jean because they're not exciting, but they are rich, quietly. And the thing is, her story is repeatable. It's boring. It's slow. It's not market dependent. And it works, especially if you're over 50. Because the less time you have, the less tolerance you should have for complexity, volatility, and regret. Now, let's talk about the real enemy, the 7 stupidities that sabotage more retirements than any recession ever could. The 7 silent killers of $10,000 wealth. Let me be clear, these aren't exotic mistakes. They're not headline worthy, but they are relentless, and they destroy more retirements than market crashes ever will. Let's go through them, one by one. I call them the 7 stupidities. 1, chasing hot stocks. You see something shoot up 40% in 2 weeks. Everyone's talking about it. You think, just a little exposure, I don't want to miss out. You buy high, it cools off. You panic sell, rinse and repeat. What you're really doing is lighting your compounding on fire. I've watched people turn $10,000 into $4,000 in less than a year doing this, and they always tell themselves it's a lesson. But at 55, every lesson costs time you can't buy back. 2, using leverage. This one is quieter, but deadlier. A 55-year-old man once told me, I just wanted to juice my returns a little. He took a margin loan to double down. The market dipped just 10%. But his portfolio dropped 30%. Margin calls, liquidation. He lost $40,000 in a weekend. Leverage doesn't ask your age, but it punishes you based on your timeline. If you're over 50, the math is brutal. You're borrowing short to invest long with no bailout. That's not strategy. That's Russian roulette in a suit and tie. 3, timing the market. Everyone thinks they'll be the one to get out before it crashes. They're not. You're not. I've met maybe 3 people in 60 years who timed the market twice successfully. I've met hundreds who tried once and never recovered. The problem isn't just being wrong, it's what you miss while you're waiting. Miss the 10 best days in the market and your returns drop by over 50%. Miss the best 20, and you might as well have sat in cash for a decade. But guess when those days happen? Usually right after a crash. When you're too scared to be in market timing is the investor's version of trying to jump off a moving train and land on your feet. You don't look smart. You look broken. 4, taking advice from the wrong people. If you're over 50 and still basing your strategy on what your cousin, your gym buddy, or some 23-year-old on TikTok says, you're not investing. You're outsourcing your future to strangers with no stake in your outcome. I had a client once, a brilliant guy, who followed a Discord trading group. He told me, they seem to know what they're doing. They didn't. He lost $27,000 before realizing they were just recycling Reddit posts. If someone's not willing to eat their own cooking, ignore their menu. And if you're following someone who makes money from your clicks, not your returns, run. 5, underestimating time. This one's subtle. People say, it's too late to matter. They look at their $10,000 and say, what's the point? So they do nothing. Or worse, they do something stupid because they feel behind. But let's do the math. $10,000 growing at 9% annually becomes $38,000 in 16 years. Double that to $20,000. You're at $76,000. You didn't even do anything special, just existed. If you're 54 right now and plan to work until 70, that's 16 years of compounding, but only if you start now and avoid blowing it up. Time punishes hesitation, but it rewards patience. 6, selling too early. I've seen more wealth die from impatience than from bad investments. People buy an index fund. It goes up 11%. They think, great, I'll take my profits. And they cash out, never realizing they just amputated the very process that creates real wealth. Compounding doesn't work unless you let it work. Every time you interrupt the curve, you reset the clock. And at 60, you don't have time to restart curves. 7, thinking $10,000 isn't enough. This one kills motivation. You think it's too small to matter. You think wealth is for people with 6-figure starting capital, but $10,000 is enough to prove you're capable, enough to build the habit. And that habit, over 10 to 20 years, does become real money. Nobody builds wealth by waiting until they have more. They build it by respecting what they already have now. Let's talk about the one rule that makes all of this make sense. The rule that turns $10,000 into $1 million. Not by magic, but by design. Let me give you the rule that could save your financial life, especially if you're over 50. Avoid stupidity. Stay solvent. Let time do the compounding. That's it, simple words. Hard to follow, but they contain everything you need to know about turning $10,000 into something meaningful. Let's break it down, not just in theory, but in the math, the psychology, and the philosophy. The boring miracle of compounding. Most people don't understand compounding because they never let it breathe. Let's take $10,000 and apply no genius, no tricks, just 8% annual growth. That's the long-term average of the U.S. stock market. In 10 years, $10,000 becomes $21,589. In 20 years, it becomes $46,610. In 30 years, it becomes $100,626. Now, you might say, yeah, but I don't have 30 years. Fine. Let's say you're 55 now and want to retire at 70. That's 15 years. $10,000 becomes $31,722. You contribute $500 a month during that same time, you'll have close to $170,000. Even with modest returns, you didn't trade, you didn't predict, you didn't stress. You just respected the math. And most importantly, you stayed out of your own way. The biggest advantage you have at 50 plus isn't income or IQ. It's your ability to avoid catastrophic mistakes while allowing time to compound what's already working. Psychology, the inner enemies. But math alone isn't the battle. The real war is in your mind, because compounding is simple, but not easy. Why? Because of these 5 voices that kill it. 1. Greed. I can do better than 8%. 2. Fear. The market's about to crash. I should get out. 3. Boredom. This is too slow. I need to spice it up. 4. Ego. I'm smarter than the average investor. 5. Envy. He just made $40,000 on Tesla. I missed out. Each of these voices will whisper in your ear, especially when you're running out of time. And if you listen to them, you will derail the very process that would have saved you. Let me say this clearly. The older you are, the more you must focus on behavior, not brilliance. Your job isn't to outsmart the market. It's to outdiscipline yourself. Every panic sell, every impulsive trade, every emotional exit is just future wealth bleeding out of your timeline. Philosophy, slightly rich and sane. Here's the part nobody tells you. The purpose of wealth is not to be impressive. It's to be free. It's to sleep well. It's to never have to beg or depend on people who don't care about you. You don't need to be a millionaire with yachts and stress. You need to be the person with enough and the wisdom to stop before you burn it. Charlie used to say, "It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid." That applies to life, investing, and aging. And if you're over 50, chasing easy will bankrupt you faster than any crash. So here's the better goal. Be the boring investor with simple rules. Be the sane one in the room. Be the person who quietly lets $10,000 become $100,000 because you didn't touch it. That's not failure. That's mastery. And now that you understand the rule, let's make it practical. Here are the filters and habits that protect your money when you're past the halfway mark. It's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to build a system that prevents you from doing the wrong thing when emotions take over. So here's your checklist. Clear, actionable, tailored for late starters, especially if you're over 50. These aren't tips. They're behavioral filters to protect your capital and peace of mind. 1. If you don't understand it in one paragraph, don't invest in it. Complicated products are built for the seller, not the buyer. If it takes a 40-page PDF and 2 webinars to explain, it's a no 2. Automate the boring. Set up auto transfers. Dollar cost average into broad index funds. Remove, should I invest this month? From your brain. Discipline is easier when you don't rely on willpower. 3. Protect the downside first. Have 6 to 12 months of expenses in cash or liquid assets. This isn't dead money. It's survival capital. You can't invest well if you're panicked about your next bill. 4. Never invest with borrowed money, period. If you can't buy it with cash, you're not ready for it. Leverage is a young man's game, and even they lose. 5. Limit your inputs. Too many opinions equals paralysis and bad decisions. Pick one or two trusted sources. Tune out the noise. You don't need 50 hot takes. You need one clear path. 6. Reinvest everything. Dividends? Let them compound. Interest? Let it roll. Until you need the income, treat every dollar earned as fuel for the Fire 7. Check your portfolio no more than once a month. If it's not part of your plan, don't stare at it daily. The more often you look, the more likely you are to react emotionally. Investing isn't about monitoring. It's about staying put. 8. Invest in broad, boring baskets. Vanguard. Total market. S&P 500. You want the whole forest, not one flashy tree. Trying to pick winners is like trying to win the lottery with logic. It doesn't work at scale. 9. Be allergic to urgency. Any offer or strategy that requires you to act now is a trap. Real investing is patient. Only salesmen rush you. 10. Have a clear do-nothing threshold. Example. If the market drops 20%, I will not touch my investments for 90 days. This pre-commitment stops panic in its tracks. 11. Write your investment plan. 1 page max. What do you own? Why? When will you sell? What's the goal? If you can't write it clearly, you can't follow it consistently. 12. Remember, simplicity scales, complexity breaks. You don't need 20 funds. You don't need 15 asset classes. You need consistency and clarity. If your strategy can't be explained to a teenager, it's not a strategy. It's a trap. These filters won't make you rich overnight, but they'll keep you from bleeding slowly, which is how most portfolios die. And over time, avoiding those leaks is what builds wealth. Now let's address the biggest myths people over 50 fall for, and the financial advice that sounds good, but quietly destroys your future. Let's clean up the mess of half-truths and feel-good slogans that sabotage real wealth, especially for folks over 50, because at this stage of the game, bad assumptions are more dangerous than bad luck. Myth number 1. $10,000 is too small to matter. I hear this constantly, and it's wrong. Here's the reality. The investor who respects $10,000 and compounds it wisely will always outperform the one who disrespects $100,000 and gambles it away. Why? Because the first investor builds discipline and consistency. The second builds habits of destruction, and those habits don't change just because they get more money. More money doesn't fix behavior. Good behavior creates more money. So yes, $10,000 matters. It's enough to start the fire, and over time, that fire can light up your entire retirement. Myth number 2, I should pay off all debt before I invest. It depends, and context matters. If you're carrying high-interest credit card debt, 15%, 20% or more, that's a financial emergency that should be your priority. Nothing compounds against you faster, but if you've got a low-interest mortgage or manageable car loan under 5%, and you're in your 50s or 60s, you need to invest at the same time. Why? Because you need compounding working for you, not just against you. You don't want to reach 70 with no debt and no assets. Balance is the key. Split your cash flow. Attack the toxic debt, yes, but don't delay investing until everything's perfect. Perfection is procrastination in disguise. Myth number 3, index funds are boring. I'll never get rich that way. Good. Boring is the goal. The problem is we confuse excitement with effectiveness, but excitement doesn't build wealth. Excitement builds anxiety and transaction fees. An S&P 500 index fund returned over 10% annually for the past 50 years. That turns $10,000 into over $1.2 million in 45 years. And in just 25 years, you're still looking at $100,000 plus off a single well-tended seed. If you're over 50, the game isn't get rich fast, it's get stable and stay sane. So yes, it's boring, but it works, and that's the only thrill you should care about. Myth number 4, if I'm starting at 55, it's too late. This one's painful and false. What's really happening is grief. You're not mourning missed opportunity, you're mourning wasted time. But guess what? You can't invest the past. You can only invest today. At 55, if you can put away $1,000 a month for 15 years and get 8% returns, that's over $370,000 by 70. Add in Social Security, some budgeting, maybe downsizing. You got a real retirement, but not if you spend the next 5 years beating yourself up instead of putting your money to work. Late is still better than never, and never is what happens when you stay frozen in regret. Myth number 5. There's going to be another crash. Maybe I should wait. Sure, there will be a crash. There's always a crash coming. That's not the question. The question is, will you be in the market when it recovers? Because every single recovery pays the patient. People who waited on the sidelines during COVID missed one of the fastest bull runs in history. People who waited after 2008 missed a decade of compounding. Markets crash, but they also rise, often when you're most afraid to be in. And if you're investing consistently, crashes become opportunities. They're not threats, they're discounts. Waiting for the perfect time is like waiting for a plane ticket that will never go on sale. Eventually, the flight leaves without you. Next, let's talk about the hardest part. What if you feel really behind? What if you're over 60 and just starting now? What if the numbers feel too small and the time feels too short? There's a path forward, but you have to be honest about where you stand and smart about what you stop doing. Let's face the fear head on, because if you're over 60, you're probably not just asking, how do I grow this? You're asking, is it even possible anymore? I've had this conversation with hundreds of people, smart people, hardworking people, people who didn't mess up because they were lazy. They just didn't know better. And now they're looking at a modest account balance, rising healthcare costs, and maybe 10 to 15 earning years left, if that. So let's walk through the most common fears, not with hope, with clarity. Objection number 1, I've already wasted decades. Isn't it too late? No, but it is late. And the key difference is this. Late requires urgency. Too late leads to despair. If you're still earning, still upright, still have some income you can redirect, you are not done. But you must switch from ambition to preservation. Your goal is not to win the game. It's to stay in the game with dignity. That means stop swinging for home runs. Cut every unnecessary expense. Save and invest with religious consistency. If your past is full of financial chaos, your future must be defined by discipline, no exceptions. Objection number 2. What if I can't save much more? Then saving enough is off the table. But saving something is not. And here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit. Small habits still move the needle. If you invest $200 per month from age 60 to 75 at 7% annual return, that becomes almost $55,000. Not life-changing? Maybe. But in a tight year, that might be the difference between panic and peace. And if you're married and your partner can match you, that's $110,000. Combine that with Social Security, part-time work, lower housing costs, and lower expectations, and you've got a plan. The enemy of progress is comparing yourself to someone who started earlier. Don't play that game. Play your game, and play it with precision. Objection number 3. What if there's another crash soon? Let it come, because if you're investing monthly into a stable, diversified fund and not touching it, a crash is actually the best thing that can happen while you're accumulating. You're buying more shares at cheaper prices. That's not a threat. That's a discount. What matters is not what the market does this year. It's what you do over the next 10. Here's the real fear you should have. Not that the market crashes, but that you never get in at all. Because when the rebound comes, and it will come, the compounding only rewards the investors who were present, not the ones who were perfect. Objection number 4. What should I avoid most right now? Heroics. That's the most dangerous instinct of late starters. Trying to make up for lost time by going all in on some high-risk venture, buying options, flipping houses, chasing alternative investments. That's not a plan. That's a midlife crisis with a trading account. You want dignity? Stick to a boring, simple strategy that won't betray you during a downturn. No leverage, no timing, no one big play. Just a clear, repeatable system that protects your downside and leaves room for small upside wins. The later you start, the more allergic you should be to drama. Next, we're going to slow down and go deep, because there's more to this than money. There's pride, regret, shame, hope. This next section is a long-form walk through the emotional and philosophical landscape of investing after 50. The mistakes we carry, the culture we live in, and the quiet power of doing things differently. Let's pause the spreadsheets. Let's step away from the numbers for a minute, because there's something deeper happening here, something most investing channels never talk about. This isn't just about compounding money, it's about compounding dignity. And that's especially true when you're in the second half of life, because if you're over 50, you've lived enough to know the world isn't fair. Time slips faster than you expected, and some mistakes, financial or otherwise, can't be undone. But here's what most people miss. You don't need a perfect past to build a stable future. You just need to stop repeating what broke you. Let me tell you a story. The loud man who lost everything. I knew a guy, let's call him Vic. Big personality, big dreams, always chasing the next big thing. He started businesses, traded stocks, flipped properties. He looked like a genius in bull markets. And then 2008 came. He lost his house, his marriage, his confidence. He had all the information, but none of the discipline. And by the time I saw him again at 65, he was angry. Not just at the market. At himself, he said, I had it more than once. I just couldn't hold it. That line stuck with me because that's what most people don't understand. The game isn't about getting money, it's about keeping it. The quiet millionaire nobody notices. Contrast that with a woman I met at a retirement seminar. Mid-60s, drove a used Toyota, lived in a 2-bedroom home, no jewelry, no flash. She had $1.4 million in her accounts. And not once had she ever tried to beat the market. She just avoided losing to herself. I asked her once, what was your secret? She said, I ignored everyone else. Let that sink in. In a world screaming for your attention, the real wealth is in quiet resistance. The culture of financial pornography. Everywhere you look, you're being told to chase. Chase growth, chase status, chase freedom by taking more risk. But that's not freedom. That's financial pornography. It sells you the image of wealth, but not the character it takes to build it. And if you're over 50, you're especially vulnerable because you feel the clock ticking. You feel like you missed the window. And these influencers, newsletters, talking heads, they know it. They prey on your fear of being average, of being too late, of dying broke. So they whisper one more move, one more trade, one more shot. But that's how you lose what little peace you still have. And peace, not profit, is what real wealth buys you. Reframing the game. Here's the better truth. If you're 60 with $10,000 and no debt, you're not poor, you're positioned. If you have the ability to live below your means, you're not behind. You're freeing yourself. If you're investing slowly, quietly, boringly, you're not a loser, you're a threat to every salesman who needs you to panic. So don't try to be brilliant, just be consistent. Don't aim to impress, aim to endure. And above all, don't let the noise of others drown out the peace you've earned. Now, let's close. One final section. No bullet points, no math, just one cold, clear, reassuring message from someone who's seen the wreckage and the resilience. Let me leave you with this. Most people waste their best years trying to look rich. Then they spend their later years realizing they never actually were rich. They chased excitement. They craved applause. They made noise. And in the end, they had to start over, if they could. But you have a chance right now to do the opposite, to become the quiet investor, the one who doesn't panic when the market dips, the one who doesn't chase every trend, the one who protects $10,000 like it's sacred, because it is. You're not too late. You're just in a different chapter, and that chapter demands less flash and more focus, less prediction and more patience, less guilt and more discipline. Let the young be clever, let the traders gamble, let the loud ones perform. You're not here for noise, you're here for peace, for safety, for a future that won't humiliate you. Forget getting rich fast. Protect yourself from getting poor slowly. Let $10,000 be your final reset, not your final regret. Because if you do it right, it might just become $1 million. Not overnight, but over time. And time, my friend, when combined with sanity, is still the greatest multiplier of all. Be boring, be disciplined, be free. That's the real wealth most people never find, but you still can.